I'd watch the practice with none of my friends. I'd turn the dial to ABC to see the creep of the week that Bobby Donald defends. But I'm out of practice.
With your hosts, Keith Varney and...
Out of practice.
A very thankful Mike Indeglio.
Way back in high school, most every night, my mom watched QVC, so I missed the practice. There was no TiVo, what could I do? Wait 15 years, get fat, then
fat.
streaming on Hulu.
Mission accomplished.
Out of practice.
We're recording early because I'm getting my attic insulation inspected.
Out of practice.
Just as sexy as that imagery implies.
Out of practice.
And welcome to the Out of Practice podcast, a weekly podcast in which I, Keith Varney, I'm gonna do full names today, and my old buddy Mike Indeglio, Michael Joseph Indeglio. Am I right?
Yeah, that's it.
Son of a bitch, I'm a hero. We discuss the. I mean, what's my middle name?
Charlie.
There you go. That's wrong. We discuss David E. Kelly's award-winning series, The Practice.
It's something weird, right? It's like a girl name or something? Rebecca?
No, I'm not going to say it on the internet because that'll be like the password on like 6 different things. But
Theo?
Theo. Oh no! Don't give away my pseudonyms. We are discussing David E. Kelly's award-winning series. This week we are up to season 7, episode 12, Final Judgment, which definitely feels like the a series finale title or a season-ending title. But no, it's just episode 12.
Yep.
We got a bunch more this season, but we're excited about it. How's it going, Mike?
It's good, man. Not much to report, except that it gets dark really early now.
Yeah.
Yesterday was great. I didn't see the sun at all, which is, every year I think I've moved forward a bit through therapy, through vitamin D supplementation, through full array lights everywhere. But, Keith, there is no combating it. It just sucks the hard one.
No, it's tough. I was feeling the same thing yesterday, actually. It's really tough. I'm not a fan. I think psychologically it's difficult, and I do the same thing. Jillian thinks I am nuts. It is brighter than the sun in my basement with full spectrum lighting in every possible direction, and I'm like, I could drill a hole there and put more lighting in.
Anything. And to add to that, I'm now 41 years old, and I think you can probably relate to this because
I'm older than you.
No. Because we don't have children.
Yeah.
There's some assumption that we need to be with family on these various holidays. Now, I have a family. Like, my wife is my family. I'd like to just have dinner with her and call it a day. But because we moved close to family, we got so many invites, and with all these invites, your choices become really. I'll narrow it down to the 3 choices.
Okay.
Be obstinate and be like, we're just doing our own thing. Leave us be. And then everybody's mad at you, or worried for you, or a combination thereof. 2, make a select, choose someone, and then
everyone else is pissed off.
Everyone else is pissed, but says they aren't, and then you have to deal with that over the next couple weeks before Christmas, and you make a second plan. Or 3rd, do that thing that I've been doing since I was 18 years old and just tires me out, which is pop, 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 pop. Just spend my day driving everywhere.
Oh, you're gonna go on tour.
So we've yet to really narrow it down. Now, I'm at an age where I could just make a choice, but my wife doesn't want to piss off my family, which makes sense. But we got to do it on Christmas too, because Christmas, God love, she hasn't seen her family for Christmas.
You have a built-in excuse with COVID.
It's really
because
really
going on
here,
tour during COVID is not a good idea. You shouldn't be doing that.
You're right, but this is coming from a guy who just got off a cruise ship, so it's a little thin. It's a little thin.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But anyway, so we're gonna do. I think we're going to see my sister for a brief spell, have a little dinner, and then come back and do Thanksgiving here. Plus, my mother-in-law is planning on coming for Christmas, so we're getting a little Jen's family in time. So anyway, but it is Thanksgiving, Keith. Before we jump in, real quick, I just want to say I'm going to try to be a little less snark today because I am thankful for the privilege in my life, the good friends in my life, the few but mighty viewers and listeners to our podcasts, plural. We appreciate each and every one of you. Just thankful to have this outlet, this little space on the internet. So thank you, and best to all of you and your families for those of you celebrating this Thanksgiving season.
Yeah, and likewise. It was that's I'm going to be extra snarky to make up for it, but it's going to be fine.
It'll balance.
Yeah, no, and we, what we do, and we've discussed this before, but we during the when we're not during the apocalypse, because last year we actually did just stay home, but our normal plan is always to do one holiday with one family and the other holiday with the other family. So that is our plan for this year. I was going to tell you my heroic tale of saving ourselves from a falling light fixture, but maybe I'll save that for next week because we have a bunch of fun stuff to discuss this week, starting with a very quick but loudest segment we call I just wanted to give a little shout out to my brother-in-law. We just watched his arc on a new Amazon series called I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it is a remake, not a continuation, a remake of the movie series, the Jennifer Love Hewitt-based movie series from the 90s, which was actually based on a book for young adults, and Amazon has remade it in Hawaii, and it's I tell you what, I mean, it's really fun, and Erica's great on it, and there's lots of crazy stuff happening. But I have never had a series make me feel older, because it's all about these high school kids who the story, like that somebody gets murdered and then they try to figure out who did it and blah 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 blah. And even though all the high school kids on the show are in their 20s, because that's how you do things, the dialogue, the lingo is in contemporary high school speech, which means it's practically a separate language that I'm sitting there with Jillian trying desperately to be like, wait, what does that mean? What did they say? Is that a word? Is that a word you use that way?
Incomprehensible.
Incomprehensible to my old brain. And this is also one of those things where not only being old, but being old without kids. So, if we had kids, we'd be sort of passively aware of it through our kids talking. But as it is today, I'm like, the what to the who? I'm completely baffled, which I'm sure our parents were with our stupid words. So this isn't coming from a place of judgment. It's more like I'm not fluent in teenager. So anyway, it's fun. Check it out. It's beautifully shot. I mean, the locations are just unbelievable. And I'm not going to say what happens and who done did it, but a lot of stuff happens, and it's fun. So
anyway. Someone done did it. Look, folks, for those of you who've heard us talk show business many times, I'm not related to Eric, so I can say this. There are people who you watch have success and sort of have a feeling about because they're terrible people, and there are people who are genuinely good, friendly, funny, empathetic, warm people who find success and you feel great about. I believe that word is called compersion, Keith. And
speaking of new vocab words.
And I feel that for Eric, he's a wonderful guy. I'm so excited to check this out and see his work.
Oh yeah, no, I no question. And it's funny, like, I come from a family, like, if somebody does something, like, everyone hops on it like vultures, like, we're so excited. And every time I text him, like, hey, we're watching you, he's like, oh, really? Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you so much. And it's like, he has gratitude, which is amazing. Anyway,
that's awesome.
he would hate us talking about him on the show, so let us move forward.
I promised you, so I will be brief. I want to just touch on two things. I think I've mentioned both either to you personally, Keith, or on the podcast. So I'll start with a show that I've fallen in love with. It's called Couples Therapy. It's on Showtime. There are 2 seasons. Season 3 will, I think, debut early next year, I think February of 2022. I'll just say this. For those of you who are in therapy or have thought about it, there aren't great depictions of it on television. This is the greatest, most realistic. It is reality television, but it is real reality television. It follows this therapist here, and each season a collection of couples that have agreed to have their stories filmed. There are hidden cameras in the offices, so the couples forget. They don't forget, but it's not in their face. So
they're aware they're being filmed. Yes.
It takes the performative quality off, and they get into the work. It's not always successful. It's not always pretty, but it's not cringy in any way. It doesn't feel voyeuristic. It's just a great exploration of what couples therapy is like, what therapy is like, and what a good therapist is like. So I highly recommend it. It's on Showtime. It's called Couples Therapy. Next, I'll just briefly touch on a show. It's Mike Flanagan's kind of hit. It's on Netflix. It's Midnight Mass. It tackles a lot of things, maybe too many things. There's so many ideas that I think it's hard to cover just in 7 episodes. It's a little verbose, but I like that. I like a good monologue. I like people talking, especially when it's written well. The acting is stellar, and it's got some gothic horror in there, which is also awesome. I don't want to say much more. I highly recommend it. It's called Midnight Mass, and it is on Netflix right now.
Which is ironic because you texted me about Midnight Mass yesterday, and you're like, oh, you should watch this. And not 4 hours later, then another friend texted me unprovoked about the same show. So for whatever reason, the world thinks I should watch that show. So I'm going to have to check it
has a lot
out.
to say about religion, I'll say that. And it also has some gothic horrors, which I know are two things that, 2 conversations that I enjoy having with you. So I'd like to talk about it sometime.
Well, and the other thing that's happening as we're discussing it is we're getting last week's episode notes from our CEO, Jen, who is always, she's so sweet. She always texts us like the stuff that she liked about the episode, and she happily has answered the game I was desperately trying to come up with the title of last week, and of course it's Categories.
Yes, when you roll the dice.
Categories, when you roll the dice, and it's a great game. I liked it. Oh yes, it was about my family's discussion about the word notorious, which this was so long ago, we actually had to pull out a hard copy dictionary to figure out if there was an association with evil. So anyway, that's the type of thing my family does. Woo! Partying hard at the Varney house. All right. Well, let us continue forward. Now, I'm going to tease something for next week, because next week, with the guidance of our good friend and founding sponsor, Jorge Navoa,
dramaturge, if you will,
we are going to, I know, also giving us constructive notes. We are going to do a segment next week on something that happened right around now, in a preview of a segment we call Back in Time. So, over the holiday, during the break between episodes on the practice, we had something happen that drew a lot of attention. And that was, of course, the murder of Lacey Peterson and the subsequent arrest of her husband and the incredibly wild and wildly publicized murder trial about it. So, Jorge pointed this out because it was over this Christmas, and last episode was in January of 2003, but there was a break from November on the practice. So in that hole, this murder happened, although this case continued for the next year and a half. So, of course, there is I think it's an A&E series that is on Hulu now, exploring that case, moving forward about 10 years later or 20 years later. So now, oh God, I gotta turn down that music. My God. It's cool, but I can't talk when it's going,
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Anyway, so I wanted, before we discuss the case and that series for next week, I wanted to get your impressions, because you have not seen the series. I've seen the series and Jorge has seen the series, but you have not seen it. Do you remember anything about this case, and do you remember what your impression of what happened from that case?
Yes, so it's interesting you bring it up because, Keith, when I popped this on last night to start it, as we had discussed, I had forgotten entirely that, or I had thought that I had watched it already, because I did watch a documentary or docuseries, I couldn't remember which one, on this case. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was way back on a 2020 during the time period where the case was happening, or right thereafter. And it's an interesting exploration of this time period when we weren't inundated as much with the internet as like a constant presence at our fingertips. Mm-hmm. And speaking for myself, even I sort of relied on mainstream coverage of the news for the news. And
this was wall to wall at this point.
Yes. But, in the first 11 seconds of this documentary, we see Nancy Grace screaming at the screen. And I recall that often on the mainstream media, she who yells the loudest gets her point across first. And so what I remember about the case is pretty much how ironclad the prosecution was, and how it was a no-brainer that this abusive husband who was having this wild affair murdered his wife, and we were all on team. He did it. He gonna go down. I remember feeling that way. I remember feeling like it was open shut. And what's interesting about the first couple minutes of this docuseries is that they remind us of that, what I just said, and then start to show that there might be a secondary or a counterpoint to that. And so I'm excited to see what that is.
All right. Well, stay tuned, folks. We will talk about the whole thing next week on the full segment of Back in Time True Crime. I'm excited to talk about it for lots of different reasons, and I know that Jillian and I have been discussing this whole thing because she watched the series when I did, and we've been talking about it at length for a week and a half now. So thank you, Jorge, for that. Let us continue forward. Now, if you, like Jorge, wanted to reach out and tell us about an interesting case, something else going on, what's going on with your life, on your move or whatever, how would they do that, Mike?
Oh, Keith, it's so easy to do. You could comment right here on the YouTubes. As always, moderator Phoenix Cage will get back to you, as will we. Or if you want to send us a nice personal note, outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. That's our email. We check it. You can also check us out on the social media at Out of Practice. And hey, do you like the podcast, but you just don't know who to tell? Well, I can tell you who to tell. Just tell everybody by joining the jury. Leave us a rating on Apple Podcast Reviews or any podcast service. Just let us know. We can find it on the internet and let people know you love us. You really, really love us. Are you thankful? I'm thankful. Keith, back to you.
Oh, okay. Wow. I don't know if they love us, but if you're listening to this, you tolerate us, and you apparently you're out doing something, you're gardening, you're walking, and you need something to save you from ear boredom. And here we are to not really accomplish that, but we are taking up time. All right, so let us take up no more of your time and get right into the fun stuff. And that is, we're going to hop back into the time machine and talk about February 3rd, 2003. It is our second episode, aired on a Monday night. Look out, folks. And I would like to know, Mike, it's Monday. It's February 3rd, 2003. What were you doing?
This day in the basement.
Keith, I remember, I believe it was around February, March, because it was so cold. And we talked about juries before, but in my school, I also had to take dance classes. And I recall having with Michelle Hart and Harry Wolliver, these two teachers we had at our school, having a dance, like I guess a final or like a big test thing where, like, depending on your level, and I was always level 1, baby. And by level 1, I mean barely able to use the word dance. I think it had to be, strong movement was the title. Anyhow,
and I was below that. I was always below that.
There was this thing called the standing series, which is basically like an Alexander technique type of incorporation into the dance. It's about breathing and like moving your arms slowly. It's like stretching, but it's also this like movement thing, which sounds great. But you would do it for like 2 hours. It was like 2 hours of like weird like movement, and people would like pass out because they'd be nervous and they'd be like locking out to it. It was intense. But what I recall most from this one is because this is after we had 2.5 years of schooling. Still, there were these like hetero bro dudes who like refused to put on a dance belt. So they'd show up to this ballet final with their ballet tights and just freaking tighty whities underneath and look like reverse stupid superheroes. So toxic masculinity even followed you to musical theater school. And I was happy to, I bit the bullet. I was like, hey, if I got to put this dance belt on and have this little piece of thread go up my butthole, be it. So be it.
You're welcome, America.
What about you, Keith?
That's very interesting because I'm also going to talk about a class.
Okay.
So I was done my formal education at that point. But this was just my first 4 or 5 months in the city, and I really wasn't auditioning yet. I was kind of too scared to do that. I was just sort of getting my feet under me at that point. And I got my 2 roommates, who were also voice majors at school, who were transitioning into musical theater. They started with a class, an acting class.
Okay.
That I joined them with, and it's an acting class sort of unique to musical theater because it's sort of a song interpretation class. It's acting while singing class. We weren't doing monologues, and it was mainly teaching us how to act while we're singing a musical theater song, mainly for the purpose of auditioning. So you could take this song into an audition and try to prove that you can act. And so I started taking this class, and it began. This was at the old Shetler Studios, which no longer exist, sadly.
Keith, do you know that's where you and I met, that same studio, just for the record? That was our first rehearsal, was at those Shetlers.
This was on the 54th Street Shetler.
Okay.
It was still Shetler then, but they hadn't taken over the penthouse and down in NOLA. So there's 2 Shetler Studios at that point. Anyway, this is really specific information that only about 10 people actually have any knowledge of or care about. No, actually, nobody cares about it. 10 people know about it, but nobody cares about it. Anyway, so I began sort of taking these classes and beginning to learn that, just singing gloriously isn't enough anymore.
Now it is. Which it's gone back to that, but.
But now you have to. Then you had to sing gloriously and be a good actor. Now you have to sing gloriously and be hot. And so I wasn't capable of any of those at that point. But I remember just going in. I might have had my first audition by this point. I don't think I actually wrote anybody about it because I was too embarrassed. But my first audition was for a non-equity tour of Superstar. And I think at the Shetler you're talking about. And I went in there with my like jeans and puffy sweater and my chubby self, not knowing any better, and it was so overrun. Now, in musical theater rules, for an open call, usually you're allowed 16 bars of music, right, to perform, which is only a little under 30 seconds that you get to like sing it, and then boom, you move. But by this point, by the time I got in there, they'd cut it down to 8. And so here I was, chubby me, in my poofy sweater, knowing absolutely nothing, went in there and sang 8 bars from Gethsemane, as if I was in the running for that. And
as a note, for people who aren't following Keith's nomenclature here, Most Valuable Lawyer, our famous me cracking, that's 4 bars. So he's talking about only really double that. That's how much time he got. Yeah.
And so I think I just did I will take your cup of poison. And then I tried to continue. Nail me. Shut me right down. Right after. I think literally all I will drink your cup of poison.
Actually, you know what? That's all we need. We don't need to hear you. You don't actually have to take the cup. We know those are expensive.
Yeah, we know what's in. And so I went in there and I didn't know how to act. I just planted my feet. I cocked my head to the right, sang the high note, and I'm like, "You're welcome. I will take the contract now." And they're like, "Thank you." I'm like, "But I just sang the note."
We're not looking for a Vincent Price type right now.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, I don't know how we got there from my class, but because it was at the same time, maybe that's what triggered me. But like, oh, I don't think I know enough yet what I'm doing, and that was embarrassing. I still am embarrassed about it today. Anyway, we'll talk more about that class as we move forward, and more about the auditions and such moving forward. And we're only now less than a year from the momentous audition, which brought us together. Can you believe that? All right. So let us zoom out just a little bit and take a look at, what non-narcissists think about, i.e. something other than ourselves, like the world.
It's time for the Out of Practice podcast. This day in the world. The greatest hits, the biggest movies, headlines from Vermont, essential sports updates, and for some inexplicable reason, the weather from 20 years ago. Now back to Keith and Mike.
Okay.
I'm not sure why, Keith,
We're
we are not visible.
Well, Mike, let me tell you a little secret. Nobody watches this. This is an audio-only podcast that just we put up on the internet for reasons beyond my understanding at this point. But I want to talk about the movie and song first, because the news was actually a little grim. So let's talk about the top song. The top song was Bump, Bump, Bump with B2K featuring Diddy. I don't recognize this song at all.
No, me neither.
Well, it did not bump down on in Brooklyn with a bunch of opera majors. The top movie, this also didn't bump that much. It was The Recruit, the Al Pacino, Colin Farrell movie, which, if I remember correctly, was not good. But this was the point when we were thinking Colin Farrell was going to be like a giant movie star.
Right.
He had just done something that made him big. I forget what it was. I don't remember. Anyway, we were like, he's going to be huge, going to work with Al Pacino. That movie was not good. All right, so let's talk about what was on the cover of the Burlington Free Press, and we should probably lose our bump soundtrack while we do it. So, the cover of the Burlington Free Press talked about NASA begins grim task, and that was because just 2 days before, on February 1st, was the Columbia disaster.
Oh yeah,
which was the space shuttle, which blew up on re-entry, and then so what happened was a foam chunk fell off during the launch and damaged one of the heat-resistant panels. It hit the leading edge of the panel as opposed to the side, so it did damage that they hadn't dealt with before. and they knew that the panel was hit. They discovered it while they were still up in space, but according to the rumors, according to a YouTube thing I watched, who knows, a NASA official blocked requests for more imaging to see if there was damage on the leading edge because they didn't want to lose the time with the experiments that they were doing. And they didn't even tell the crew that there was possibly damage on the leading edge of their wing until a week later, right before they were about to go into re-entry, but they said, don't worry about it. The shuttle broke up in re-entry, killing everybody on board, and it grounded the shuttle fleet permanently. That was the end of the original shuttle fleet for NASA, which we still have not relaunched at this point. We're still, after this, going into space on other people's shuttles. But I remember I watched this one live, the re-entry, and it was so weird and grim because they're talking about it like the shuttle's missing. We should have heard from it by now before we saw the footage of it breaking up, which they were able to track. Like, but if you know anything about NASA and space, like if we don't hear from it from 10 seconds, it's done. Like that, it is so specific at that point. So, definitely one of the two main shuttle disasters of our lifetime, and this was the second one.
And both of them aired live on television.
Yep. And I didn't see. I don't remember if I saw Challenger live.
That's the one I definitely saw.
Point.
We were young, but I remember watching it in school.
Yeah. This
one I remember. I don't recall watching it live. I believe just the constant kind of news coverage, and it's funny because not funny. Funny is the wrong word. I don't know the word. Our society, our civilization loves a tragedy, right? And we love to frame them as these cultural comings together of these moments of unity, when in reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. I'll speak for our country. It's really everything, but I'll speak for our country. We have really found a groove in taking these kind of things and making them and polarizing them even further and using them as divisive tactics. And this was no different. Yeah, but we're all heroes. But they use it to, raise money and make it about we shouldn't spend money on. One company wants to build up NASA now, and the other party now wants to throw all the money away. So
yeah, can you imagine if it was
about the
today?
Tragedy? Oh
yeah, I mean, if it happened today, good Lord. Anyway, yeah, so that was going on. That was big news of the time. But let's talk about something that brought us all together in a way that was less tragic but very, very important in a segment we call
It's time for Sports Ball.
Continuing the story of the NFL season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, currently defending champions, won their first Super Bowl, 48-21 against Oakland, now Vegas. At the now closed Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, the game was close as the final score showed as the Raiders. Who wrote this? All right, hold on. I need to break down.
You know what? That was just bravo.
Here is the sentence that I wrote. Because I write these, and I don't know if you guys know, but I write kind of for a living. So I said, continuing the story of the NFL season, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, currently defending champions, won their first Super Bowl, 48-21 against the Oakland, now Vegas Raiders, 48-21 at the now closed Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego. The game was closer than the final score showed as the Raiders after falling behind 30. This is bad.
Try again next week, buddy. I'll fix the video. You fix your brain, and we'll try again.
I was not drunk. This was just me my brain not working. All right, well, let us just bail from that, as everyone wishes we had bailed from that segment permanently about 3 years ago, but I never will. But I feel this is very earned today.
I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. And I'm not going to take this anymore.
It's time to talk about the damn episode.
Okay, finally, mercifully, we are talking about The Practice Season 7, Episode 12, Final Judgment. It was written by David E. Kelly with a story by Cindy Lichtman, who last wrote on Target Practice, and directed by Christina Musri, who last directed on Small Sacrifices. Which leaves us with only one important thing to do before we watch the episode, and that is answer the eternal question. I like how the sentence is as long as it needs to be for me to find the cue. It can just go on forever.
Oh, man.
What is that supposed to mean?
What's your problem?
Is this what happens to women when you insert your penis?
What does Mike think's gonna happen?
You know, what if he would have drank the curdled milk? Then what would have happened?
Keith, if you recall last week, we decided to make our client stop taking her meds so she goes a little bit wacky, and by a little bit, I mean pretty wacky, into a schizophrenic delusion reality. That's a very scientific term I just used. And we think it's going to be great because we can save her life this way. Unfortunately, I think what's going to happen, Keith, is not only do we get her acquitted by grounds of insanity, but then she doesn't want to go back on her meds. So we then have to go back to court against our own client to try to force her back on her meds. And all the while, some sexy things are happening.
Such as?
Jimmy rekindles with Judge Kittleson on the side.
Ooh, Kittelsons.
I don't know why or in what context, but
Now, how would Jimmy re-Kittlesoning with Kittleson jump the shark, perhaps?
Oh, well, because in a stunning twist, he decides that he has to be a little more forward with her. So instead of her just being naked in his apartment, he's in her chambers, bare-ass naked, ready to play Hide That Berluti, and she just walks in.
Woo! We get full Jimmy.
The full frontal Jimmy. The Badaluke. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. And like, that would be the one where, like, they release the uncensored DVD where it's just like, boom. Right there. Like, the uncensored version of The Practice, and that is the only difference.
Yeah.
Because we get a long, extended shot of the Badaluco. Great. All right. Well, there it is. I got nothing to say about that. It is time for us to watch the episode before you do a final judgment on us. And we will see you back here on the YouTubes for the after show.
And we are back, baby.
Yes, we are. So
Woo.
that was quite the episode, and now it is time to have quite the recap here on a little segment that we call
2, 3, 4. Mike has 30 seconds to remember what just happened on the show. Segment.
So, guys, we're back, baby. Bobby is hard up for cash, so he convinces that $120 million winner to just take 3 and give half of it to them and be cool with it. On the other hand, Ellenor saves a life by torturing a woman briefly, but then arguing the 8th Amendment to stay in execution.
Yes, indeed. Do it again. But, fewer syllables.
Okay. How about I do that? Oh, I can't undo it. How about I do that in a segment we call... A life... What does that say? Oh, a life and death fight. Bobby's threat to sue is fucked. Plead for the future.
Yes, a life. What's that say? It also works.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
it also works. Yes. So there it is, folks. A life. What's that say?
Oh, that's funny.
Bobby's threat was fucked. All right. Let us know. Let's hand out some awards in a segment
Ladies and
we call
the Out of Practice podcast, in unofficial, unsolicited, unfactual association with David E. Kelly Productions, proudly present
Oopsie.
the Oopsies, celebrating excellence in acting good, lawyering good, guesting good, and being Tom Brady. Not to mention, this is where we rate the episode and stuff. Now, here are your hosts, Keith and Mike.
What the hell are the Oopsies?
Well, Jackie, they're a very prestigious award that begins every week with
Most valuable
Woo!
Guys,
These might be a little anticlimactic.
let's jump to it. I think Mount Rushmore of closes for the episode for this series. I think I'd have to really go in and like remember all of them, but this is definitely atop the list, in the top 5, I would say. I happen to agree with the outcome, but even if I didn't, even if I was opposed to it, I'd have to at least tip my cap to some of the points made. So, MBL is Ellenor Frutt.
Yeah.
With an assist from Jamie Stringer. I feel like she needs the assist because she did not let her throw in the towel.
No, and she came in with the strategy that helped. Now, was it necessarily necessary to give Ellenor that strategy because she would have known it as opposed to like to the audience? Yeah, but nonetheless, yeah, no, Ellenor, of course, it's a huge case for Ellenor, and it's a huge win on a couple of different levels. So let us just continue forward. Everybody stretch. It's time for
Already famous cause you've been on TV, getting a paycheck, or the first entry on your IMDb. Way to go, but you're the best guest actor. You are the best guest actor. You are the best guest actor on the episode.
You know, Keith, this Saturday, for like a joint birthday party, my friend and I, his wife, hired an outside company to come in and like run a laser tag game in his yard, set up all these barriers, had these like real life-size like rifles, like paintball rifles. Like, it was awesome.
I want to do that.
Yeah, it's awesome. But just like I was just playing sniper, so I climbed up in the swing set and was just like sniping people, but still sore. And I have to tell you, doing the fast dance nearly wrecked me. So thanks for that. Here you go, best guest actor. I'm going to let you expound. I always get to go first. I think we know who it is, but tell me of the greatness.
Yeah, okay. Well, first off, want to just throw out a shout out to Harry Lennox, who it's very clear he was going to go on to bigger and better things from this performance. He did a great job. But yeah, obviously, there's a reason that Alfre Woodard has like 18 some odd Emmy nominations and an Oscar nomination. And, you know, she's one of those actors that you just hand the really difficult part to, because it's, you know, there are actors you can give the showy part to, and you know they can land the big moment and whatever, and that's great. But what she had to do here was more difficult than having a breakdown, more difficult than a big moment. She had to layer a performance at like 16 different levels of illness, and that she had to calibrate from scene to scene. And we forget, these aren't necessarily shot in sequence. These aren't shot, you know, piece by piece, like, all right, so now we're at a 3, now we're at a 5. She had to do all of this probably in little pieces all over the place, many times getting other people's coverage. And so you have to find an actor capable of that from a technical standpoint as well as an emotional standpoint to do a story like this, because this could be very bad if handed to an actor not of the caliber of Alfre Woodard. And I think that is it's what we see on screen is extraordinary and impressive, but also what we don't see, the traps that she avoided, the mines that she could have stepped on in this performance that she didn't, the taste level that she demonstrated here is just, it's extraordinary work. I mean, there's not a lot of people in the world who can do that, and it was a pleasure to watch.
I'll add 2 points. One, and the credit goes to the writing as well, obviously, but like Keith mentioned, it is, you stand on the precipice with an episode like this, that it comes across preachy, that it comes across heavy-handed or too one-sided. And yes, the writing fights against that, but a performance like this is nuanced, that it is so fully realized and three-dimensional that this is a living, breathing person. It's about her case, and it takes the edge off that preachiness, and in this case, obliterates it into just like a really near perfect episode. Second, it's not just the technical aspect here. My guess is even at this point in her career, she was offer only. I'm not sure there was much of an audition process that took place here. However, my guess would be, if you were to be able to dig up an audition tape, the performance would be almost this fully realized. This is somebody who comes into this taping with a fully researched and realized character. Like, there wasn't a ton of direction here. This is an actress who just brings it. So, this
get
was
out of her way.
What a pleasure.
Somebody like that comes in, and I mean, you talk about the tightrope of the preachiness, but the tightrope of playing mental illness.
God, yeah.
I mean, like,
takes
wow.
a confidence here that she really demonstrates.
That could be real bad. Real bad. A good actor can give a really bad, embarrassing performance doing that.
Yeah, yes. Well, and a lesser actor who's not bad, the other, I don't even call it a trap, the more sort of expected result is someone who is suffering or in the throngs of mental illness, where the character that is portrayed here is someone who is a victim of mental illness.
Yeah.
And that's a very subtle distinction, but you can see it here. In the hands of a good actor.
And I think both from the, and we talk about this in the oopsies, but from the direction and from the writing and the performance, the layer here that you don't usually see is how painful it is to suffer from that type of mental illness. She's genuinely suffering. And we forget that. And, and not to just go down too grim a road, but living in New York City for 20 years, you see it. You see it on the street, and you see people suffering from this. And it's the most heartbreaking, helpless feeling to see somebody in the midst of this, and there's not much you can do. And it felt, at least from my meager experiences from the outside witnessing it, that she had done the research, because physically, emotionally, it matched whatever sadness that I've seen in my own personal experience. So anyway, that was grim. Let's talk about something more exciting and another phenomenal actress in the segment.
You killed your podiatrist or blew the case, but you let a single tear run down your face. You're the best actor on the show.
These are points we've made before. I'll make them real quick. We've sung Cameron's praises up, down, left, and right, but you really see her expertise in craft when placed opposite of a goddamn legend, because there is every flaw, every choice you make is amplified by the sounding board it's bouncing off of. And forget the actual end result, the intimidation factor of stepping onto set with someone that talented could affect your performance. But you don't see that here. You see Cameron at the top of her game. I would highly suspect that she even looks back at this particular episode or this series of episodes with a lot of pride, because this is an actress, an actor at the top of their game, delivering with such a confidence. And I think it's credit also to David E. Kelley and the director who gave her the space to work. She delivered those closing monologues. They did not come across as monologues whatsoever. They seemed prepared legal remarks delivered with passion. And, we point out a lot of the tropes and a lot of the flaws, but it is so wonderful when I get swept up in these episodes, even though we're recording and it's part of our job to talk as much as possible and be funny, but I just get swept up in the work. And it's what a pleasure to just see this performance. I mean, Cameron, easily one of her best episodes.
Oh yeah, no, and I think at this point they were both legends. They were both titans. They were both Emmy winners at this point. I mean, Alfred had a longer career at this point, but yeah, I mean this is just it's like you said, it's a pleasure to watch. It's a pleasure to witness. It had to have been a pleasure to film and be a part of. And yeah, I mean, look, this is our 145th episode. I don't think I have anything. I do not have the vocabulary to continue saying how awesome Cameron is. We all know it. You know it. We know it. Yeah. She's Cameron. She's got it. That's her. And you know who else has got it? Has got a loss coming up tonight. No, he doesn't.
No,
but in my heart, he does. Playing my New York football incompetent Giants. This guy.
The Tom Brady Award for being Tom Brady.
Keith, we'll see how delicately you want to handle this one, but Tom Brady, the winner this week is Give Me My Medicine, Tom Brady.
Give me my medicine, Tom Brady. Yes, indeed. Let us hope the Giants, the New York Football Giants, give him some medicine this evening in Tampa. I'm going to look back at this and know, like, oh man, we lost 49-2. How'd we get a safety?
I've been some upsets lately, so who knows? And it could happen.
Well, look, I am tied for first in my picks leagues this week, and I might pick the Giants just because, like, I don't want to tie. I want to win.
Or lose.
Well, or lose. No, exactly. I mean, but that's my only way to outright win is to pick the Giants.
Okay.
Which I did before, and I won the previous week. All right. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. And more importantly, let's throw some tires out the window.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to announce how many spare tires this episode gets.
We talk about tropes, and an episode like this actually reminds me of how lazy the show is sometimes. Because when they really put the fine-tooth comb over it and really give it the old college try, they can bring the heat. I'll bring you one example. So many times we've joked about little details put into an episode that are just left as dangling threads and never really make any sense. And then there are episodes where they put them in to add emotional context. We talked about her playing the true sort of terror and pain of the mental illness. And that episode where they bring up the coughing and then they have that manifest with Jamie in the holding cell. And then, whereas lesser episodes, when the show's not feeling confident, we would turn that into a whole thing where she would attack Jamie, and then it would be this thing about using that as showing that she's insane and not blah, blah, blah. I saw it going down that path. My brain started playing out a narrative where that becomes a huge thread. But here it's not that. It's much more subtle. It's just showing the paranoia and the fact that she recognizes the paranoia, and Ellenor sees it, and she's seeing that she's suffering, and that plays into her making the decision that she wants to be back on the medicine, even if it makes her die. All of these things flesh out the character. That's great from the writing standpoint, great directorially. The actresses pulled it off wonderfully. It all works. The show can often get very preachy, but they were able to balance it. They were able to get a strong point across whilst not letting her off the hook, whilst not forgetting the pain of the victims and their family, whilst still pointing out and highlighting that in this very particular case, and I'm not even passing adjudication on the death penalty, though Ellenor does highlight some of the ridiculousness or the hypocrisy of it. But it's simply saying in this case, a system that is set up with checks and balances to help here, right, failed her. And you, judge, have an opportunity to fix that. And actually, really, Keith, is one of those times where this week specifically, this hit home for me because, not to get on my soapbox, but in a case with the Kyle Rittenhouse case that was had its verdict this week.
The verdict was this week, yeah.
You see how much power a judge actually holds. We live in this sort of fantasy that a jury of your peers makes a decision, but in the truth, that jury is very carefully curated in what they can and can't do. And even after all that, the judge can throw it away. And then in appeals, we didn't even worry about the jury. Now we're just going straight to the judge, who can undo everything that was done. So,
yeah, a politically appointed judge, mind you.
Correct. So, I think this week even more, the hypocrisy of like the fact that this system and everyone is so righteous about it, when in turn you're condemning this woman for murder by murdering her. In much more, I thought it was just the point. Once again, whether you agree with it or not, when stated so eloquently, I thought is powerful. And then when paired with such an emotional performance by the two leads of the episode, it's just out of the park. I think because I'm so moved by it, and this is funny that I felt this way about the other about Jimmy's death penalty case as well. David E. Kelley really can put a fine point on this subject matter.
Yeah.
It ranks up there. I can't find many nits to pick, though I'm sure maybe you'll have given a little more thought to that. But I am giving this a solid 9.25 spare tires.
Wow. Yeah. No, I actually don't have a lot of nits to pick. I think it's everything that you said, and I don't want to necessarily keep repeating the same things over and over again. But this is a confident episode about adults for adults with some adult thinking and questioning, and they didn't go the cheap route with any of it. They earned everything they did. So obviously, and personally, I am also moved and agree with the points that we're making there. So I'm a mark for it, obviously. I guess everything I need to say about that's been said. I will say this about the other storyline, about Bobby's behavior under pressure financially with these settlements. I thought that was very interesting and filled in some information we didn't know yet about how do these settlements work after the big verdict. What happens next? And I'm glad to have gotten that little window into that. Now, is the way that Bobby is handling the financial stress that he's under particularly helpful to the likability of Bobby's character? Yeah, no. But clearly at this point in the show, they are putting a lot of eggs in the he's very attractive basket in terms of us liking the character, but that's fine. I don't mind having a lead character with questionable likability. I think it's interesting. I get it. This is and obviously we talked about last week. I wish that this had been set up a little bit better, but I can't fault this episode for the setup previous to it. I would have liked that. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any complaints with this episode. It feels like it paid off what we set up well. So yeah, I think I'm going to give it a 9.13. Okay. I thought it was excellent. I mean, I think by far the best of the season so far.
Well, and it sets a bar for them that hopefully they can they're going to be adjudicated against. The other thing I wanted to point out, Keith, that you were saying with Bobby, the likability factor, but the color that it adds to the kind of overall tapestry that I enjoy is that I like that we're at a place now where we are comfortable in the office now, not just holding grudges, but calling each other on our shit. The fact that both Eugene and Jimmy had the freedom to go up to Bobby and basically be like, "That was you embarrassed yourself," I thought was Bobby needs that, and I thought I feel like it needed to be said. So I'm fulfilled from that, and I hope that that carries over.
Yeah, no, for sure. Wow. Okay, folks, that was a good episode.
Would you say that Bobby was acting like a boss baby?
I think maybe I was. Maybe he was being a big old boss baby.
Mm-hmm.
Right there in the in our Easter egg. Well played, sir. All right, folks, we did it. We are another episode in. You have watched The Practice Season 7, Episode 12. If you would like to talk to us and tell us your thoughts and feelings about this episode, you can email us at outofpracticepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on the Facebook at Out of Practice Podcast and on the Instagram at Out of Practice Podcast. Would you believe it? While you're at it, hop onto the Apple podcasting service and leave us a rating and a review. Join the jury. We're going to read it. We're going to be so excited. We're going to play a bumper. It helps anyone listen to us. We really appreciate it. Speaking of people we really appreciate, we'd like to thank our founding sponsors who give us money. Wow. Including Jorge Navoa, Cloudlover69, Leanne Wrights, Jennifer Macedova, and Kari Kuhn.
Pay attention to Jorge and Phoenix. If you give us money, or Jorge, I should say, if you give us money, we'll do segments that you request, and
That's
even
true.
segments that you write for us.
We work for you now.
You can do so by giving us a one-time donation or a monthly contribution. You can find those links in our show notes. Guys, is your medicine having searing hot light photons shot into your eyeballs? Because if it's so, give me some of my medicine and shoot off those laser sounds.
Laser sounds.
Nailed it?
Nailed it.